play first. There we go. We are live, everybody. What's going on? We're back to episode 2, right? Right, Wayne? Are you frozen already? Motherfuck. I can't hear everything you're saying, Wayne. You got yourself muted. Let me see if I can unmute you. Are you unmuted? Wow. You were just... Stop. There you go. Can you hear me now? There you go.
Yeah.
Oh. Thought we worked out the bugs, but we guess we didn't. So we're back for episode 2.
Got me muted. Maybe. I don't know.
It
doesn't matter. We're on now.
Yeah, we're on now. Episode 2 of The Proof is out there. Seek the proof.
Seek the proof.
And we had to, this was a question that Wayne had dropped a while ago. He asked me, he's asked a bunch of people about, what is it, Wayne?
Oh, I ask, when you're running a still, do you run a drip or do you run a stream? And, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on that and a lot of different reasons for that. So for their opinions. So I thought we'd do a little discussion on that and kind of share some other people's opinions.
And tonight we have 2 special guests joining us. The first, everybody's favorite redhead from the TV show Moonshiners, right? Amanda Bryant.
Right.
Oh, you had to embarrass me. Hi, everyone. What's up?
And the second person, I don't know how he identifies. I guess he could be a deer. I don't know. Alan Bishop, the alchemist of the Black Forest. How's it going,
Welcome,
brother?
Alan.
Good,
Glad to have you, buddy.
You're not a deer tonight, are you?
No. Amanda's also the only ginger in the world I like.
Oh, thank you so much.
There you go.
Very honored.
Oh, Jolie's going to kick your ass.
I'm going to take that one to the bank. Oh, don't make her more mad at me. She was not a fan of me after the Alan Bishop video that we made, the Alan Bishop Day.
Now,
thank you.
Let me see. I'm trying to share this real quick, but before we get too far into it, because all right, shared there. Man, people are messaging me like crazy. Like, where's it at? Where can I watch it? Where can I watch it? People.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is cool. I don't do this much, and this is pretty late for me. I will just say 8 p.m. Man, this is like my bedtime.
Yeah, Amanda's getting to be old
Grandma
now.
Amanda.
Listen, I get up very early.
Let me see. Oh, I gotta. So, drip or stream? What are your views on that, Alan? I got some questions, but I want to hear some views first.
Oh, okay. Well, obviously, as with everything, it depends on what equipment you have, and then whether or not that equipment is actually sized correctly, and you somewhat have an idea of what you're doing. But let's just presume that we're talking, pot still with a worm. I have yet to ever find any historic literature ever from folks that were smarter than all of us combined will ever be that recommends a drip, unless you're aiming for something incredibly high proof with very little flavor. That's the only time I've ever seen it historically. That's not to say that some people are doing it wrong. Some people may not have equipment that's sized properly to be able to get a stream, but pretty much all the old cognac books all recommend the same thing. All the old Scottish distillers recommend the same thing. You want to stream. You don't want a huge stream. You don't want it, you're not trying to push it as hard as you can, but you also don't want the worm to sit there and be taking breaths. You don't want that stream to fall back on itself. You don't want it to run back up the underside of the worm. You want it to come out, in an arch, basically. So I'm a stream guy 100%, wherein the equipment is actually sized properly or works properly. Now there's times where that's not always going to be the case. Like when I made that little clay still, that little worm wouldn't do that. There was no way it would do it. And then if I'm running, I don't know, let's say shotgun condenser, single shell and tube, and I'm going for high proof, I'll drip that for hours and hours on end just to hold the proof that I want to hold at. So with just the deflag and no plates. But that being said, I'm not a still engineer. Luckily, there's a guy that I know that sometimes builds stuff, even if it's crazy, if his computer ever works right.
And
Yeah,
he's spinning right now, so I don't know what the hell's going on.
Right?
Oh,
we lost them.
the host of the show is gone. What the hell? I guess he'll be back. I guess I have to ad lib until he gets back. So, there's a lot. Oh shit! I forgot to turn on the comments. I got a whole bunch of comments here. I've got a lot of. I got some questions. I'll just throw a few questions out here real quick. Maybe if I can get to them. Okay, so old school lore says if it ain't dripping, you're running too hot. Right. So, what about that?
That old school lore, and there's nothing wrong with moonshining. Obviously, I come from that background as well. But there are folk superstitions that are incredibly, incredibly useful, and then there are folk superstitions that are just that a lot of the times. Not to say that there aren't instances where you might not want to be dripping. Let's say here, I'll give you an example, and this is all about having tools in the toolbox. Let's say typically I'm doing something that's really volatile. In other words, it doesn't have a lot of or it has a very easy to lose aroma. I might back the still down to a drip. Maybe. Probably not, because there's usually no reason to. The other thing that happens when you back down to a drip is that then when you're running a drip, you're rarely ever going to hit a proper obtention temperature. And obtention temperature is the temperature of the distillate that actually is coming off the still. And typically you want that between 68 and 72. And I know everybody says colder is better, but that's again that's not historically been the case, and that has not been the case through traditional folk distilling knowledge. A lot of things sort of pop up around Prohibition, and I think a lot of what you're seeing is a lot of people got into distilling all of a sudden during Prohibition, and like anything, it's you try to make yourself look more intelligent than what you are because you need the customers, etc. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, there's always exceptions to the rule, but I tend to value knowledge that has been passed down for multiple generations from the folk countries that brought distillation to the United States. So that'd probably be the easiest way to answer that. A very long-winded way to answer it.
Oh,
I haven't done one of these. So.
Hey guys, sorry, I had to relocate. I lost signal.
Yeah, what you meant to say, Mac, because he is over it.
Good. Yeah,
you got better signal down here?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm outside the back door here at the house now. So,
all right.
Sorry.
All right. So, Amanda, what about you with that question there? The old school lore for dripping. You're running. What is it? You're running too hot if you're not dripping.
Yeah. So I love contradictions in distilling. Right. This is where I always try to learn stuff. And I think I probably, when I first started distilling, for a long time, I heard the whole slow and low, right? And
right.
Again, running too hot, and they preach slow and low, slow and low, slow and low. So you actually work in the backwoods with somebody who's been running a pretty large pot still for their entire lives, and they tell you, lay it to it. And I'm like, what? And they're like, well, just throw a log on the fire and lay it to it. So not that there's a contradiction there. There kind of is, right? Where they're telling us to run as slow and low as possible and never be in a hurry to get the still ran off. But put yourself in the backwoods. If you're a moonshiner and you want to get in and out and get your run done before, the revenuers show up or the police show up, you just basically want to get it done. And Mark Rogers and some of the guys I've worked with who've been, making quite a lot of liquor, they lay it to it. And personally for me, heating my still up, I pretty much heat it up as fast as I can, right? Without scorching the grain or puking the still, but I will lay the heat to it to get my still heated up. Because I'm also working on efficiency, right? Efficiency is my time. My time is money. And I don't want to be there all day. But once I get the still heated up and I get a stream coming out, then I dial the heat back down so that I have a consistent stream. And the size of that stream for me is a number of factors, right? It's really like number one is the size of your still. If you have a 10 or 5 gallon pot, some people have smaller than that. You're definitely going to have a drip coming out of that size still. And if you have a 20-gallon pot, there is a point where when I ran a 20-gallon, I did run really low and slow because I was afraid to run too fast. And I was told if I ran really fast, I would get hotter alcohol. So that's what I believed for years. And I would run because they told me you run the stream like I had heard. And some of you also may have heard this. You run it like an old man peeing. So it's like a stream and a drip, a stream and a drip, right? Like so for a long time in my mind, I was like, somebody said, what kind of stream do you have? And it was either the width of the head of a coon pecker, but you have a stream and a drip. But that was the size pot that I was running on. And the bigger still I got, I mean, if you see a big still run or a still in a big distillery, they are pushing alcohol, right?
Yeah.
So much so that when you put your hand in front of that, there's cold air just blowing out from how fast the pressure is building up in the thumper or the column and coming out that condenser where there's pressure coming out fast. So a number of things, right? The size of the still, how much alcohol you have in the mash. Are you distilling a mash or are you distilling a spirit? Both of those will distill at a different speed because high proof alcohol is going to distill much more quickly than a standard mash will. You also might run a mash at a lower temperature, right? Because you're afraid to scorch something like that. Depending on what kind of heat source you're using, the size of the still, whether or not you're running a thumper, it's a pot right to a worm. There's all kinds of factors that come into play. But for me, it's the size of the still. And I think you just, like, again, I used to run it very slow and very low until I saw other distillers making really good, really smooth distillate and making it really fast and over some heavy heat, which I thought was heavy heat. And the first thing I thought was just like everybody else thinks, they're running too fast. It's going to make hot liquor until I tasted it. And I realized that this notion was maybe false. Or there's just more to it really than running super slow and super low. Those have benefits to run that way, but like Alan said, you're doing that for a reason, right? You're trying to bring up the proof. Or sometimes I've worked a little bit with Alan where we're running a pot still, right? So we're manually controlling the heat and we're dialing the heat back to extend our hearts cut a little bit. So we're trying to slow the stream down to get a bigger hearts cut at the end of the hearts before we go into tails, where that's where we would really kind of dial it down to extend the good portion of our run. So it's complicated. There's a lot of factors to it. It's a great contradiction, right? But that's why I love distilling this. I love to talk about contradictions. So I'm glad you guys brought me on. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That dialing down is important too, Amanda, to your point, because that's really what people are talking about here. And I don't think that they necessarily everybody realizes what they're talking about, but what they're talking about is, you've kind of gone through it here, is actually a distillation curve, right? So, and to be great merchandise for you guys. So distillation curves matter. There you go. I mean, we've already said pecker and drip within the first 12 minutes, so might as well go with this.
Pecker, drip, curves, distillate. Wow.
But you're not running a one solid temperature, one solid speed the whole time, as Amanda said. You know, there's times, you know, when you're starting up, you're going to be going pretty fast, and then, you know, about 10 minutes before you start to come across, you're going to dial it back some, and then after you get past your heart's cut, you may speed up a little bit through halfway through the distillation, then back off right before you get to your tails. Like she said, you're controlling natural reflux, even if you're not using a deflag or anything, and that's going to determine that, and how proper your equipment is in terms of sizing. That's going to determine a lot whether or not it drips or it runs, and what the attention temperature is. Right? It's not definitely not a black and white issue. And Amanda has seen that herself with working with the guys in the backwoods and working with what she's doing now, and then also out at Mount Vernon. So at Mount Vernon, a couple of the stills, as Amanda knows, the worms weren't necessarily designed correctly, and a couple of the stills, no matter what you do to them, they will always spurt. There's no way to get a consistent stream off a couple of those stills to maintain that stream. They're just not, they weren't sized correctly. So, and that's for somebody like me or Amanda or some of the other distillers like Eric I've seen out there, and other guys like it. There's one in particular named Helen, which is the biggest still. And it just, if you're obsessive compulsive at all, it will drive you up the damn wall. trying to like, oh, I'm determined. I'm the one distiller that can get this thing to run the way it's supposed to run. It's never gonna stay there. Maybe for 10 minutes, and you'll feel real good about yourself, but it'll humble you real quick.
So
It's a tricky one.
so we talk about different size stills and stuff. So what do you guys think about, let's say, for instance, you got a 20, 30 gallon pot, but you're running a still head and you're carrying over 2-inch diameter all the way out to the shotgun. Would you run that faster or than you would one that's choked down? You know, say 1 inch all the way out, or 3/4 or 5/8, whatever.
Is it? Because I see your
Vapor
question, and I have to ask: does it have a proper vent on it or no?
No.
Then
Proper
I'm
vent as in
right. I'm probably going to take my time the first time or two I run it anyways and see what it does. But all things being equal and bearing in mind that say a worm is going to make a somewhat heavier bodied spirit than a shotgun or a shell and tube, as long as it's not a single shell and tube and as long as I'm not going for high proof, I'm probably going to have almost the exact same approach as long as it'll handle the vapor. Right. Might run a, but it's just putting your toe in the water and testing it. Right. What is it actually going to do here? So
yeah,
but without I'm more cautious.
Yeah.
I
just noticed when I run like one of my rigs out to a 2-inch shotgun, it's a lot different than when I was running a smaller condenser, or I was necking down to 3/4 and going out, you know. Definitely seems to just run a lot faster and smoother.
Yep. And also I'd be interested to hear what Amanda has to say here too, but the other part of that too is, let's say I'm doing just a straight up stripping run. As long as I'm not, as she said earlier, I'm not worried about scorching. I'm just going to run a waterfall on the stripping run unless it's brandy or something really volatile. There's really no reason to run slow on that stripping run. It's that doubling run, that spirit run where you need to be paying more attention to that distillation curve. But yeah, you're correct. There are differences in the way that those run. Yeah,
I love the video Tyler put up on my question on Facebook. You know, he showed one of the stills just running a strip, and I was like, dude, that you're cheating, dude. Oh, come on, that's not what we're talking about.
Dude, those stripping lay it to it, man. Get through it.
Lay it to it.
Fire in the hole. Real quick, Amanda, I got to ask you for a favor.
Yeah.
I got a buddy of mine.
Depends on the favor. It depends on the favor. But go ahead.
I got a buddy of mine, Travis. He loves you on the show. If you could just say hi to him, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, man. What's up, Travis? Thank you for watching. I appreciate the support, and there you go. I would say so. Okay, I was gonna say something smart about Damon, but I'm gonna be nice today. Hi, Travis. We're gonna keep it PG.
I'm an open book. All right. Anyway,
I'm glad that you have all your clothes on today. Facebook. By the way, Damon,
did you see that picture?
Wow, don't you want me to post it, Damon?
It even made it to Amanda Bryant. Alan. You didn't see the picture of my ass, did you?
No.
At least there's one person that didn't see a picture of my ass.
I missed that one.
You lucky bastard.
Damn it. Well, Wayne, you've seen it in person, so it's all right.
Yeah, well.
Next question. Damn, what you do to me, Wayne? Come on. What's the biggest mistake new distillers make when they're trying to chase that fast stream, would you say?
You go ahead.
Okay, I would say new distillers are doing the opposite. Most new distillers are very careful, overly careful, and tend to overthink most of what they're doing. I know that because I did as a new distiller.
Oh, yeah,
and for years, so I distilled on my own and in a small group of people, not around any other distillers for a long time, several years before I met any other person who actually distilled. So I had a very my own boxed way of doing things, and meeting other distillers helped me to learn. I was just overthinking a lot and being super, super careful about everything I was doing. So I think new distillers are afraid to run too fast, because we hear the same thing that's drilled into our minds, right? Like low and slow, low and slow. And so many students that I get that are beginners that I talk to, we talk about how fast the still should run. And a great way to figure out how fast your still should run is to keep a log of how you make your cuts. Like if most of us at home distilling are making like mason jar cuts on a reasonable size pot still, maybe with a thumper. But I think most distillers are running too slow because they don't realize the speed or the rate at which they can run their still, and they're afraid to make a hot distillate. I've tasted the opposite, right? That's not to say that everybody does that, but for the most part, myself and a lot of my students that are really new to distilling are running super slow. Like they're like, I'm outside for like 14 to 16 hours a day running my pot still. And I'm like, dude, we need to talk about this. Like, first of all, heat up your still as fast as you can. When I say that, I don't mean scorch it, right? If you're using direct heat, use some kind of an agitator like marbles. The electrical elements will kind of like agitate for you. Make sure you have a really clean or strained mash so you don't have any sediment. And then you're able to heat it up a little bit faster. The use of marbles only works if you have like a direct heat on the bottom of your pot. It helps to stir. It's a very cheap agitator, but it helps you to heat the pot up faster, which can cut down on your runtime.
And, you see, like those little clay beads, would that work?
Around, as long as it's perfectly round, so it can move around, kind of. And I've seen beads; they sit in place and they kind of dance around. But a perfectly spherical marble will actually move in a circular motion and stir really well.
I've heard of people putting copper pennies, total, whole copper pennies in.
They kind of sit in place and they dance around. Okay. But that's what I try to encourage newer people is to not be so scared. And a good way, what I was getting at is to do a log, right? And write down how frequently you make that 1 quart cut. And then you can sit there and review your log, and you can say, okay, this whole run, it was taking me 10 to 15 minutes here to make a cut. But then at some point it started taking me 20 to 25 minutes to make a cut. So you can see that your distillation has slowed down. You can go back and compare one distillation to another, and you can kind of see like today I ran the slower than I normally do, but you wouldn't know this unless you're paying attention to time and cuts. But that's a really good way to figure out how fast you can run your still. And I had to push it. When I went on that master distiller competition, they gave me 4 hours to distill. So I had to figure out how I was going to get into my hearts in a 4-hour window. So I set a 4-hour timer and I turned my still on, and I just practiced over and over and over until I figured out how to get into my hearts in a 4-hour window by not filling the still all the way, right? Like if your still is not completely full, it's going to run more quickly also because you have less alcohol in there, and you'll be able to get into your hearts more quickly than you would if your still is completely full, because you're going to be able to heat it up more quickly as well. But keep track of your time. Note when you're making cuts, and don't be afraid to run it too fast. You can run it too fast. You can scorch, you can puke. These are not things I recommend, but I think what I see most people that are new to distilling, or at least don't have experience on running a lot of different kinds of stills, or at least not experience running a lot, then they're afraid to just go too fast. And you got to just push your equipment and learn what its limitations are, because there's going to be times where you want to run really, really slow, where you want to run really fast, like Alan said, on a stripping run. Obviously, you're not going to be making cuts on that, and you're not going to be paying attention to, you don't really want to run that very slow. Yeah, I would say most beginners are not balls to the ball, like I'm going to lay it to it and run it super fast. And those that do that are going to learn very quickly, because they're going to puke their still immediately, right? And we've all done this. We've all puked our stills by running too fast and getting too courageous. But it's a really good learning experience, because then you immediately know not to do that again.
Right.
Right. What about you, Alan, with any advice towards new distillers and how fast they're running?
I'm not far off of Amanda. I think it's maybe a little bit of a different piece, a little bit of different experiences that probably if they were doing this for a living and then doing it at home, they'd realize that 18 hours on the keg stills. As someone who has slept a lot in boiler rooms, if I was distilling at home or elsewise, we're getting this shit done and going to bed is what's happening.
Right.
So, yeah, I see that, but and then the other thing I see not as much of, and this is thanks to education through Amanda and other folks as well. I don't see this as much as I used to, but it used to be, and there's still some out there. Obviously, the guys that are the great pretenders. My grandpa knew Popcorn Sutton, and so Popcorn Sutton always did it this way, or like even they're 3 weeks in and now they're a professional. A little bit too cocksure, right? It goes the opposite of what Amanda's saying sometimes, where they go a little bit too fast into the whole thing. But yeah, I think they also. The other thing is, as Amanda said, making a log will help. And, a lot of the home distillers, they do the jar cuts. Hell, there's even professional distillers. As Amanda knows, there's so many distillers, when you go to Mount Vernon, that's basically jar cuts. You're just doing it with pots instead of jars. And they do that because a lot of those distillers aren't necessarily trained. And it's a quality control check. But I know a lot of even professional distillers, like they almost get too stuck on that. And it kind of cripples them to some degree, right? They never really learn how to cut on the fly or any of that sort of stuff, right? Which is the opposite direction. Great to start off that way, but you don't necessarily have to stick with that all the time. For once you get going, obviously. I don't know. I think probably the biggest thing that I see is people have improved. Home distilling has improved dramatically the past couple of years. Even within someone's first 4 or 5 runs, quite often now, because of the amount of education they have access to on the internet and the people they can talk to on the internet, if nobody's just absolutely confusing them with BS, they can be good product in 5 or 6 runs a lot of times. The bigger thing that I see is what I call, like, it's not even technical mistakes, it's mistakes in the approach to distillation, right? Whether or not that spirit is actually something that moves someone or is handled with a certain amount of care, sort of thing. But that has very little to do with what we're talking about necessarily. It's just an observation of the mistakes that I see. So yeah, mirror Amanda basically on that issue.
Yeah.
Alan, would you say that there's between a drip and a stream, flavor wise, with your distillate, is there any huge difference that you notice?
There can be, yeah. So let's take whiskey, for example. When you are fermenting grains, there are a number of compounds that you are creating in that fermentation, aroma-wise and flavor-wise, that you do not necessarily want to come across in that distillation. And if you are not catching your proper obtention temperature, that between 68 and 72 degrees, as best as you can, obviously there are always going to be fluctuations. Yeah. You're not catching that proper obtention temperature, which has a lot to do, again, with having properly designed equipment that will run a stream properly or will be vented properly. What's happening is you're condensing everything too quickly because everything's cold. And so all those volatile elements that you may not have wanted from that fermentation that should have been created as a gas and should have off-gassed on that condenser instead of being imbued into the spirit, they're being put into that spirit and bonded into that spirit. And while some of them are volatile enough that they'll come off with airing out your spirit after distillation, a lot of them are not. A lot of them are going to sit in that jar and they're going to be there 20 years from now when you open that jar, and they're never going to go away. If there's a fault that I commonly see in whiskey, both home distilled whiskey or moonshine, and professional distilled whiskey or moonshine, that's it. That's one of the biggest faults I see, is running the condenser too cold, which has a lot to do with flow, obviously, etc. Because you're chasing temperature and flow at the same time, along with that distillation curve, right? Those are all going hand in hand, as well as taking into account anything that you may not have a properly designed vent if you don't, or even maybe not have a vent at all, right? So you have to take all those into consideration as you're going through the process.
Yeah. So like you're saying, properly vented, being like the worm that I built you for the distillery, it's 1 inch ID, inch and 1/8 OD. So even though you're running a damn fine stream out of that thing, you still got gap all the way.
Oh, yeah.
It breathes really nice, and that allows that off gassing you're speaking of.
And that thing has never once huffed.
Nice.
I've never seen it huff a single time. Yeah, and it would take, I could probably damn near get away with running that thing on that 500 gallon, truthfully. So
wow.
But
All right. So for you, Amanda, eh, something Ellen had mentioned with getting your water too cold when it's
Mhm.
condensing.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people when they're first starting off putting ice and making a big old ice bath in their condenser. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. So this is another big contradiction that I like to talk about, especially I get asked all the time. And this is a big contradiction, not just among experienced people and inexperienced people, but there's distillers and especially moonshiners that are on both sides of this fence, right? About how cold to run the condenser. Um, and most of the moonshiners, what you're going to hear is the colder the better, right? Super, super cold.
Mhm.
Because if you have a warm condenser or your distillate is warm coming off of the still, then you're going to have hot liquor. So I can explain why they think this and why they're getting this. But I've also had moonshiners tell me that ice cold can shock your liquor and make it hot coming off the still. Because I do believe that you can condense too much or too rapidly, right, on the still. Tony Mandela, how cold is too cold? So yeah, if I would say like having ice right off the still, when you have a worm, it's warm on the top and cool on the bottom. And what happens is that vapor comes out and it's gradually traveling down the worm. So it's gradually condensing. It's not going from 200 to 212 degrees to right down to, 30 degrees, 32 degrees, or something that is
Gradient.
freezing cold. I think that rapidly cooling can be too fast. It's exactly what Alan said. We are condensing all of the volatile vapors that some we would like to off gas, but we're condensing it all into a spirit. So what I like to do is I like to run my condenser warm on top, cool at the bottom. And really, as long as we are condensing that vapor, condenser size and the size of the still, these are all things that come into play. The bigger the still that you're running, sometimes a condenser has a hard time keeping up with it. Your water source is a big thing. A lot of times I have run big stills off of creeks or gravity fed pipes, which aren't very reliable. I've had them clog up or be slow. I've used hose water from my house. I've also even used icicles, right? Like where in the wintertime, my condenser is heating up really fast. So I'll go outside and grab all the icicles from my house and put them in the condenser. And it helps to keep it cool. I have recommended to people a gallon water jug, keep that in the freezer and you can throw that in as long as it's in your condenser. The condenser water is still pretty warm, right? Generally, and that's melting and it's dissipating that heat and keeping it cold. But I did learn with experience that the warmer condenser actually makes a smoother spirit because we're not condensing all the volatile things that we're later going to go back and off gas, hopefully. Some distilleries purposely run their condensers warm to counteract this off gassing, like a continuous column still that we can't necessarily maybe make cuts on as good. We are running that condenser warmer intentionally to off gas some of those vapors that recondense at they have a lower boiling point and they're recondensing at a lower temperature. So it's better to off gas some of that stuff. But the reason that people say that a hot worm makes hot liquor is this. It's simply this. And I think I figured it out. I'm not 100% sure, but this is what I think. If you have a jar of moonshine, right, or a jar of any whiskey, it doesn't matter, a bottle of good whiskey, it's sitting in your car, and you open that bottle or you open that jar, it's going to smell really hot when the distillate is warm, because the warmer the distillate is actively off gassing, right? So even if you've made cuts properly and you have a good clean distillate, if it's hot or it's warm, there's evaporation going on. So when you taste it on your palate, it's going to burn. And when you smell it, it's going to burn your nose because it's warm and it's actively off gassing and there's a little bit of alcohol evaporation going on. So warm distillate coming off the still to a moonshiner in the backwoods would taste hot. And then if you take a jar out of the freezer, it's closed off. There's no off-gassing occurring. The flavor and the aroma is going to be totally muted. And even a jar with poor cuts and a lot of heads in it, you can throw in the freezer, pull it out ice cold and drink it, and it might taste smooth and super good to you. So moonshiners got into the notion that the colder the worm is, the smoother the liquor is because it was closed off and it wasn't off-gassing. And then times where the worm would run warm, they would taste it and they would say, this is hot because it was actively off-gassing. But if you go back a day later and you check on that alcohol, once it becomes room temperature, the warm alcohol that has off gas is probably going to be smoother than the ice cold liquor that you've run once that warms up and begins to off gas.
Makes
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
I'll give you guys a contradiction too, a contradiction of myself here. So, at Old Homestead, and this would be something common that, you know, as people scale up, they'll see things like this. So, I had a little bit of the same problem at Spirits of French Lick, and this goes along with what Amanda said about contradictions to begin with. But so the stills that we had at Spirits of French Lick, the ones that we have at Old Homestead, they come from China, and you know they're not bad stills. I've had Vendome guys come in and look at them. They all say the same thing. There's things here they do better than us, things here they do worse than us. But the one thing that the Chinese are terrible about is designing line arms that are properly designed and sized and shaped. So on my 250-gallon doubling still Rose, she has an 1.5-inch arm coming off the helmet that goes about 3 feet up in the air before she goes over, right? That's a tremendous pinch point for vapor, which changes the way you have to run the distillation curve to get what you want. But that also provides ridiculous opportunity for natural reflux, right? Especially this time of year going into the wintertime. So Tyler, my still hand, Tyler Richardson, actually assistant distiller for all intents and purposes, he got to watch me be very confused for the first week or so of running that still and trying to figure out how to get around this, right? Because what was happening was typically you would expect double pot still distillation proofs to be about 135 proof on average for your hearts. And I was consistently hitting 140 proof and there was no way to get around it, which is fine. 140 proof is a little higher proof than what I prefer it to be. And I noticed I was losing a little of the volatility that I wanted to keep. So how do I get around that? I have to lower the condenser temperature. Now, that's a giant shell and tube condenser, so it's not necessarily slowing the flow down, but I have to run that condenser colder, say 60 degrees as opposed to 68 to 72, in order to hold on to some of that volatility that I would be otherwise losing just through reflux alone. So it's a point of no return going the opposite direction sometimes as well. So again, that all the stuff that comes with experience and the approach to distillation as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you both touched on something that I think is really important, and that's temperature gradient in your condenser. You know, Amanda mentioned your worm. You know, same with a shotgun. You want that to be warm, or you know, hot as crap at the top. You know, and then as it starts going down, it gradually gets down to your obtention temperature, and so yeah, it's a very important part of how fast you can run your still as well.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's you know, I got a one of those shocker condensers from Wayne. I've been using that. But I was having some issues with it. When I first started using it. I was fine. Didn't have any issues at all. Then I was having an issue with keeping it cold enough because I was getting steam. And Wayne said stuff it with some mesh.
That's what I did.
Which I did, and it helped a lot.
Yeah, it's really, that condenser is really not a single pass.
Doesn't like that
condenser.
Yeah.
It was
that.
a brain fart and it works, but it's you know, we're not really actively pushing those, and I've been making a lot of shotguns lately. So get up with a shotgun, buddy.
Yeah. Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for making me your guinea pig.
No, Mr. Bishop was the guinea pig.
I think it was the opposite. I'm pretty sure you're the only still builder I could call and be like, hey, I had this really dumb, drunken idea. Can you build this fucking thing?
Absolutely.
See,
don't know what it'll look like the first time, but we'll do it.
Right.
Nice. All right. So next, Wayne, you got a question, or you got? I'm gonna go on. I got another question here.
Let her rip, buddy.
So, do you find it harder to make clean cuts? Damn, clean cuts.
Hey, now this is
when running a stream or a trip. Do you find it harder to make clean cuts when doing a stream versus a drip?
I don't. I mean, a drip would be harder for me than running a stream, obviously, because that's the way that, as far as I'm concerned, you should do it. And actually, there's a really cool thing, and I got to show it to Amanda when I was out at Mount Vernon. The French used to have this method they call the 3 bubbles. right? And so this only works if you're running a stream and you have a pool that the alcohol is falling into. And so two things will happen when you're running a stream, a proper stream off of a still with properly sized equipment to whatever degree that exists for you. First thing will happen is that when you run from ethyl acetate to acetaldehyde, you'll actually see a little burp from the actual worm itself from the stream. The second thing is that if you have a collection pot underneath there, when you're coming up on those cuts, you should have the middle of that stream in the middle of that pot. It should be making bubbles, right? As you're getting all that interaction between the falling liquid and the liquid that's already in the pot. You should be able to see 3 of those bubbles reach the edge of that pot and stick to the edge of that pot. And 9 times out of 10, that's going to be exactly where your cut is going to be at.
Mhm.
You can't do that by doing a drip, 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 drip. You can only do that off of a stream. And so for me, that speaks to the wisdom of those old timers that we're talking about with cognac and scotch and Irish whiskey, etc., that they were observant enough to notice that and take note of it and, you know, write it down for all of us people who come later to have these conversations about drip versus stream. So,
Right. So I know that everybody runs different size stills and probably has multiple stills. I know Alan has some of the smallest stills I've ever seen. Some of that he's made out of clay. Others that he's little small copper pot. How would you? What would you do on something like that, on Alan? I know a lot of doing a doubling run on those. You're not really doing single pass stuff, or at least I don't think so. How you want to comment on that? How fast would you run one of those little boogers?
yeah. So first and foremost, I am definitely not a still engineer. My brain does not necessarily work that way. And oftentimes I joke that it's like that line from The Dark Knight. I'm like a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with it if I caught it. So I just do things and see what happens, essentially. So like the clay stills, you know, they're so inconsistent with heat because they're so small that you can't get a worm to run right on them. They'll spurt the whole time. Just like the small little beavers, they spurt the whole time.
I was wondering, yeah.
Yeah, there's no way. And I made those more as a proof of concept of like, could you do this and would it work? And it does. And it would be great for essential oils and stuff like that. Now, like the little 3-gallon all copper. I don't know if you ever saw. So I've got a shell and tube. Shell and tube for that. But I've also got a oversized square worm that I made for it, and I can run it. I can run the same size stream if I'm doing a doubling run, because I'm not stripping on that little 3-gallon. If I were to do a doubling run on that 3-gallon, I can run the exact same size stream off of that little 3-gallon as what I can run off of a 20-gallon or a 30-gallon without a problem. Still be able to make nice, clean cuts, efficient cuts, and really run the piss out of it and still hold the temperature where it needs to be at. It's so oversized that it's going to vent just like the worm that you made for me. There's other instances where, when I was doing some still building here and there, little copper stills 5s and stuff like that. Again, I'm not an engineer, so I had no idea exactly how to design those condensers. And most of those, I would say, I'm not going to give you like Eddie Van Halen statistics and be like, oh, only 13% of my shit didn't work. No, like 99% of it didn't really work the right way.
So I mean, all these things you call me up with, you're just pulling that shit out of your ass. I mean, I thought you used like pencil, paper, and
no.
I'm just kidding, buddy. Actually, you do have a good mind for that.
Right. Pencil and papers for if you have ghosts, you have everything, and the almanac. Distilling is just
there you go.
Wake up. There it is.
I do say you do come up with some really good ideas, and I appreciate all the input you've given me on stuff that we built, stuff we worked on together. Speaking of one of those, the inline thumper, which I love that thing, and Damon has the he took the 3-inch that I had at the show. I went to pack my stuff up and it's gone. So
nice.
No, you gave it to me. Don't do that. You told me to try it out. Don't do that stuff.
Mm-hmm. I'm just giving you crap, man.
Jeez, what's that?
Has Amanda got to run one of the inlines yet?
No, she has not got to run one of the inlines yet. I need to fix her up.
Is that the one that goes on top?
Damon, send her.
I'll
Yeah.
send you a picture of the 3-inch I got. I mean, the 3-inch
Oh,
inline
no.
thumper. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Jay's already got
Okay,
a picture.
On to another question. You guys are, what the hell are you doing here? All right, Amanda, do bigger condensers let you stream without sacrificing flavor?
Do they let you stream without sacrificing flavor? So I think
Like faster.
bigger condenser, right? So the condenser would just be appropriate to the size of your still, right? You want to have a condenser that can keep up with the flow of your still. I've run big condensers on in a legal distillery. I've run a big pharmaceutical condenser, like a shotgun, floor to ceiling, and that was probably one of the biggest condensers with the most water running through it that I ever ran. And that was about a 400 to 500 gallon jacketed still, and that had warm distillate coming out, right? So I would say that the size of the condenser, are we talking about a bigger condenser compared to the size of the still?
Yeah, that's what I would guess.
So I guess a bigger condenser is more, the bigger the condenser, the more efficient it will run for you, right? And then again,
say you're running a 20-gallon still and you come up and you have a 10-gallon condenser made for yourself. It's going to be better than running off of a 5-gallon condenser.
Yeah, I think it would. Again, I'm not really a still builder, so I don't know the exact ratios, but I know on a 20-gallon pot still, a 5-gallon condenser would be efficient enough to cool it, simply because I ran a 20-gallon pot still with a 5-gallon condenser for very many years, and it was efficient. So a 5-gallon condenser will efficiently cool down a 20-gallon pot still. A 10-gallon, will that do any better? I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make. It's going to cool down more efficiently, and it will stay cooler for longer, so that you will have to use less water to circulate through it. Or 5-gallon condenser is going to require more water circulating through it to keep it cool than a 10-gallon would. So a 5-gallon will get warmer faster and require a little bit more water circulation through it. So if you're somebody who is buying ice, right? Because sometimes we have, like, some people, I don't know how everybody circulates water. If you have tap water or some kind of a stream, or you're running with a hose where you don't have a limited amount of water, then the bigger the condenser would be better. Some of us have like a fish pump to some kind of a cooler, right? Where you're putting ice in a cooler and then you're circulating that water through a cooling system. In that case, I think a 10-gallon would be better and more efficient at cooling. And a 5-gallon would just get hotter quicker and run through your heat maybe a little bit more quickly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Again, I'm not a still designer. I know a 5-gallon is going to work perfectly on a 20-gallon pot because I've ran that exact setup for a long time. But I think if I was circulating my water and I was paying for ice to cool a cooling chamber to circulate through my worm, the 10-gallon would save me money on ice.
Yeah. I want to throw something in here real quick too with that, is because I don't want new people to get confused. Like I mentioned, a pitching temperature, we're talking about, cold versus hot, etc. I'll make sure, people know that adding ice to the water, you have a retention pond or whatever you have that you're using to cool with. I don't care what the temperature of the water is. It's the tension of the distillate itself, right? It's the actual temperature of the distillate of the worm. That water can be as cold as somebody wants to make it. And at home, a lot of people
use less of it.
Yeah. A lot of people do run with ice. I know Tyler does. For years, I had a little tiny freezer in my basement that I would, fill up with water and let freeze for, 10 hours or whatever, where it freeze around the sides. And that's what I pump my water out of. So yeah, I want people not to get confused by that. I'm not saying don't run cold water. Run the cold water is what you want to. Right. Just watch your retention temperatures for sure.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now I know Amanda's got kind of she's been on for about 50 minutes now, and I know she wants to get some sleep. So what I'd like to do, I don't know, Alan, how much time you have tonight, but what I'd like to go ahead and do is get a question or two from the in the comments. And now keep it about what the topic is. Okay. If you got a question or two about drip or stream or something in newer, we'll go ahead and post it up here and have these two folks talk about that. Let's see.
Okay.
I'm getting a bunch of comments, but not a question.
There is a bunch of comments. I was just going back and looking at them.
A lot of people like Amanda.
Melrose. Michael says, "Damn, stop sending me pics of your 3-inch."
Pics and damn 3-inch pictures, and I ain't getting nothing over here. It's fucking
Tom will hook you up. Tom's got them all. I'm telling you.
Mandy, you got a class tomorrow? You got a class tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm in I have day 2 of my class in the morning. We leave fairly early. I got to get up at like 4:30 to get there on time. Oh, hi, little one.
It's the my new still hand.
All right, we got a question here now. Mark Morgan asked, what about consistency? Mark, you talking about with like between drip and stream? Flavor-wise consistency? What do you think, Amanda?
So consistency would be if I'm running on the same still and I'm trying to replicate the same recipe over and over, right? To just kind of, I guess, what's the question exactly for consistency? To like, how do we condense the alcohol to water in the condenser for consistency? So you want to have a regulated flow, right? If the flow is changing in your water condenser, or it's, so what will happen with the condenser, with a worm condenser especially, is if you stir that condenser water, you're going to rapidly chill and condense everything at the top. What's important is to have like a variance in the temperature. So we want it to be warm at the top, cool at the bottom. And as the still gets into motion and starts to heat up, it's going to stay warm because the heat rises and we have cold water getting pumped into the bottom and hot water leaving the top. So as long as we have warm at the top, cold at the bottom, and your alcohol is gradually condensing, or just a little bit more gentle condensing of your alcohol vapor, so it's not just rapidly condensing on you, that's a good way to run consistently. Obviously, if you go in and you stir that real quick, a worm, stick your hand in it, give it a good stir, you're gonna see it surge. The worm's gonna surge. That stream's gonna go from maybe what was a drip to a pretty hard stream. If you're using a parrot or something, sometimes it'll overflow and overshoot. But I think just for consistency and just maintaining a consistent stream, which most of the time, if you're running off of like a hose or tap water, it's going to always be, you just set it and kind of forget it. And you don't really need to heat or cool your condenser down. Maybe towards the very end, as the still heats up, you may need to, because at the very end, your still will run from, it'll start running, depending on what kind of still, there's all kinds of variations, right? But it'll start running at a lower temperature, around 180 degrees. And then by the end of your run, it's going to be over 200 degrees. So as that happens, you're going to need to expend more cooling temperature and maybe get some more water flow going through your condenser. So you'd have to adjust your condenser slightly, just like you would have to turn your heat up a little bit on the pot to keep the stream flowing, because the stream will slow down towards the end too, as you run out of alcohol. But for consistency, I would say just consistently try to run warm at the top, cool at the bottom, and then, but there's all kinds of variations. Like a cool breeze could come and that could reflux on the outside of your copper and cause the alcohol to condense more. There's so many variables.
We used to say around here, it's all good until somebody flushes the toilet.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
All right. Now we got a question here from Sunkissed Orange.
Chris Elliott had a question.
Oh, did he?
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't even see that one. All right.
Yeah.
We'll get to Chris.
Yeah,
Bean,
Alan
we'll get to you
touched
next.
on it a while ago, but yeah, we'll get you, Bean.
For Amanda, my condenser is at 56 degrees and my distillate is cold when it comes out, and I allow it to open air for more than 24 hours, sometimes 3 or 4 days, getting to room temperature and faking it now and then. Is it enough to help it off gas? Stuff you don't want in your spirit.
Yeah. So off gassing for at least 24 hours, I like to tell people. I have let certain things go for a couple days. 50-gallon barrel, they're gonna let breathe and slowly temper that down over the course of like 7 days, sometimes more. But off gassing for those couple days for sure. By the way, hello girl, how you doing? I know her friends from Master Distiller, but yeah, I think off gassing for a couple days is definitely going to clean up, because when we condense a spirit, we're trapping everything back into it. What Alan had mentioned was that sometimes if it's very cold, we can condense things back into the spirit that, and he could probably speak more on this than I could more accurately, that we're condensing some things back into the spirit that may never off gas again. But for the most part, allowing the spirit to breathe, oxygenate, and just get some air, it's going to really clean up your spirit. So I always tell my students and people that are asking questions, whenever we distill alcohol, don't go back and blend that and bottle it right up. Off gassing is like, it's a huge part of letting the alcohol breathe and letting some of those volatile things that we've recondensed back into it evaporate out. It's going to totally change the way the spirit tastes and smells. And sometimes if we were trying to make cuts without letting it breathe first, we may make a different cut than if you let it breathe for about 2 days. You're going to come back and be like, wow, that place where I thought it was bad is actually good now, because some of that bad stuff will come out. You'll actually look at a bottle. If you don't let it off gas, you can see it evaporate on the top of the glass. Like, you'll just see constant condensation on the glass where it's trying to off gas, but it's trapped in that glass container. And you'll see it happening over and over and over until you pop the cap and let it breathe for a little bit. I would say 56 degrees, 60 degrees on a condenser. Obviously, it's going to be like, again, a gradient of temperature. That's a great temperature to run at. If you have nice cold water, that's good. And definitely letting it breathe. You're not doing anything wrong there.
Nice. So, Alan, question for you from Bean. Do you run a shotgun condenser the same way you would a worm? Worm.
Depends. So let's say it's a shell and tube shotgun condenser, I presume, as opposed to a Lebesgue. Depends on product, but yes, essentially, same attention temperatures. You know, if there's not anything I need to try to correct with design and the still, sometimes I will purposefully, if I'm going to make an aged whiskey or a matured whiskey that's going to go into a cask for a number of years, I will oftentimes run a worm a lot hotter than I would a shell and tube with a whiskey. Especially, let's say I'm doing a single malt with a lot of peat and I want some of that sulfurous kind of meaty sort of characteristic. I'm going to run that condenser way hotter than anybody at home would ever be comfortable running, for sure. So, but that's all about getting a hold of a particular compound that I'm after, that barrel is going to transform into something magical in a few years, as opposed to, and not even the barrel, but all the things that affect the barrel, as opposed to trying to make a white spirit. But otherwise, similar to some degree, but they do make two very different products. So I can tell you that you can take the same still, same mash bill, same yeast, same fermentation protocol, and switch out between the two condensers across 2 separate days, and you're going to have 2 different products from one another. Shell and tube is always, presuming that the shell and tube is copper, a shell and tube condenser is always, if it's sized properly, going to make a cleaner spirit than a worm will ever make. It just will. It's just the nature of it. It's the surface area of the copper versus the worm. And that's not to say that you can't make good, clean spirit off a worm, because you can. But a shell and tube operates quite a bit differently than a worm does. So.
Okay. So Chad Lucas slacks. He says, my problem with all my worms is inlet is the same as the outlet. Need to drill out the outlet twice the size of the outlet. I don't. Shouldn't have to. Most of them are all typically the same, right? Inlets and outlet.
If it maybe he's thinking about finding a way to vent it.
Maybe.
Like maybe putting a little riser at the outlet or something like that to be able to off vent some, you know.
Yeah.
So which helps
the bigger worm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, let's see. Trying to look. These questions and comments are coming in so quickly here. I'm trying to.
Right.
I see a couple people keep asking like what temperature to run the condenser at.
Yeah.
And then, so there's really, I don't know if Alan has a specific temperature he likes to run a condenser at, but again, that's going to change depending on how much water flow you have, what kind of condenser you have, the size of your still. What we're really looking for is for it to be cool enough to condense the alcohol. And we're not as a distiller, for me, I'm not really monitoring the temperature of the condenser, but the temperature of the distillate coming out. So I will check my temperature of my distillate, one, because I need to adjust for temperature when I'm taking a proof reading, right? If you're using a glass hydrometer, a lot of times we have to adjust for temperature, because if it's warm or cold, it's going to throw off the reading on the hydrometer. So I'm constantly checking the temperature of my distillate that comes off the still. That's just what leads me to start to monitor the temperature of the distillate. So as long as it's cool enough to condense the vapor into a liquid, that's what we need it to be. If the distillate is coming off warm, it's not going to hurt you. In the 70-degree ballpark, I've seen it 73 degrees, 74 degrees. This idea of what temperature distillate we want is going to differ depending on, for Alan, like what kind of spirit he's making, what he's trying to do with it. But different distillers are going to have a different opinion here. And that is because some distillers like it to be super cold coming off the worm. The spirit is closed up when it's ice cold. If it's like in the 50 degrees and the 60 degrees, it's going to be a nice cold spirit. It's going to be very closed up. And you're not going to be able to really smell that as much as a warmer spirit that's off-gassing. A warmer spirit's also going to off-gas coming right off the worm, and you don't have to off-gas as much, and it may taste smoother than something that was distilled very, very cold after a day or two. So to answer that question, it's a hard question to answer for the exact temperature. Ice cold stream water is coming off at about, on average, I think, off a stream, off a higher elevation is about 60 degrees is the water coming in. 60 degrees is a good temperature to feed your condenser, but we like the condenser to just be warm on top, cold at the bottom. So that way, as the water goes down the worm, it's super hot. Say your vapor coming out of your thumper or your pot is 200 degrees. It's going right into the water of your condenser. So you're going from 200 degrees, and we don't want to shock or rapidly condense or rapidly do anything really. But I think I'm not sure the science behind this, but I believe that a more slow condensation is better for a smoother flavor. So 60-degree water is great. But again, we're not monitoring the temperature of the condenser because it should have a variant. It should be warm and cold. But what we're monitoring is the temperature of the distillate coming off the still. If that makes sense to answer everybody's question. Because I saw that a couple times. Yeah. I was trying to type it and I was like, I'm just going to, easier just to say the answer.
Just talk about it. So even Richard Landry popped in to say you're.
Oh yeah, I seen that.
Oh, Richard, what's up, brother? Yes, I seen a bunch of my friends popping in here, and I want to say hi, but I don't want to interrupt anybody. So I see you guys in there supporting us. I appreciate you coming on. This is a new podcast my very good friend Wayne is putting out to anybody who's watching from my platform. He is a still builder. He owns Ozark Stillworks. He has a beautiful mind and a great friend when it comes to distilling. This guy knows his stuff. Damon over here is helping him. He's great with the podcast stuff. So he is another good friend of mine, another distiller. But yeah, these two guys are trying to put out this cool new podcast. I like it because it's contradictions when it comes to distilling, which I'm a big fan of. I like to talk about it because contradictions lead to like scientific explanations. And I like to talk about, old and new ways of doing things, and it's fun.
I think when Wayne first approached me with this idea, the proof is out there. It's kind of a play on words, like I told you, man. I mean, we could talk about liquor or we could talk about ghosts.
Yep. We're going to get into some different stuff.
Yeah. We got some good stuff coming up for winter.
Oh, yeah.
What are we calling it? What are you calling Wayne? Wicked Winter?
Wicked Winter.
Yeah. So
Alan would, I got to tell you, Alan is all about the Fortean and all this, ghosts and spirits and of spirits of all types. So that's one of the things that kind of, sparked my interest back into this stuff. I listen to his podcast and it gets me, fired up about doing other things. So,
thanks, Alan, we may have to have you back next month.
Yeah, I'll be glad to come back and talk weirdness for sure.
Awesome.
Okay. We got weirdness coming. We got wicked winter weirdness coming up next month.
Yes, we do.
So,
and I also hadn't had a chance to get one of these jokes in there yet, so I have to because I love Amanda and she knows this. But Amanda, when is Ice Road Truckers coming back on?
That's the question I keep getting asked. I know all you guys want to know when Ice Road Truckers comes back on. And normally Ice Road Truckers airs sometime in the fall. But I don't think that they have released an exact premiere date for Ice Road Truckers as of yet. But don't worry, there will be new episodes of Ice Road Truckers coming out. We have been working on them, and yeah, you guys are gonna love it. Just
Iceberg
you got to
Truckers
tune in
is
because there's
awesome.
some really sketchy roads, and there's some really like they're ice roads, you know,
White
and
knuckling?
there's
Are you
some
white
really
knuckling?
steep. What's that?
Are you white knuckling on the roads?
I white knuckle all day
Oh
for
wow!
hours. Like I have arthritis in my hands from the white knuckling.
So I didn't know about this. I didn't know the Ice Road Truckers thing. That's cool.
Yeah, see, don't underestimate me. You think I'm just here because I'm a girl, but I'm really here, guys, because I'm a star on a reality TV show called Ice Road Truckers.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were on
I saw the
TV.
dick that said that I'm just here because I'm a girl.
Oh,
That's why.
I love
You're-
it. I
you're-
love it.
Oh yeah, I saw that comment. Is she on here for just because she's
but
a
truthfully
girl?
though, and it has to be said because people are just assholes. She's not just here because she's a girl or because she's on TV. She knows what the hell she's talking about. She's
Have you
intelligent when it
listened to her
comes.
the last hour?
Yeah,
Hey,
Thank
I
you.
have.
And I didn't introduce Alan, but Alan was actually I didn't have a computer or social media for years. I didn't have a cell phone, nothing. I had just read books. And when I got on a computer, I went on and I was like, this is cool. I'm going to look for distilling videos. And I came up with an apple mash video. So I didn't know who Alan Bishop was or anything, but I watched this colonial apple mash video. And when I
Yep.
watched it, I was like, this is so cool. I learned so much about colonial distilling and the history of distilling and everything. And then way later, I had read his books and I had met him, and it just clicked one day. And I was like, oh shit, that first video I've ever seen
That was
on
the first
social
one I
media
seen as well.
or
Nice.
anything was Alan
Nice.
Bishop's Apple Mash video. But I had then at this point probably already met him and talked to him, and then it clicked on me. But yeah, so also, yeah, I appreciate Alan and everything that you share on social media because you make a big impact and you inspire a lot
he
of people.
absolutely does.
Both of you do.
One day I hope to actually meet Alan in person.
yeah, be glad to.
But you're friends with him on Facebook, so
Oh yeah, I've asked
can wear
him
the shirt.
questions. I've asked him questions before, and I was surprised
gotta
when he
get the shirt.
actually answered me. I was like, wow, he answered me. Now Amanda answers me, and I'm like, well, I know Amanda, so it's like, okay, I know she's going to answer me
Yeah.
eventually.
Oh,
Well, look-
there's one.
You got another question on here? I don't want to keep Amanda too long. I know she's
Right.
tired over there.
Um,
So
I'm okay. I got it like a second wind. I drank espresso for you guys, so
Let's just
at
comment.
6 p.m.
if there's
Uh-oh.
any questions, I see a lot of comments, not a lot of questions.
When is the next podcast?
Ooh,
Next
I have
month.
a topic. So, Wayne, we've had a cool discussion, which I would love to discuss with other distillers, but we were talking about sweet potatoes,
Yes.
specifically sprouted sweet potatoes for their
Yes.
diastatic power and the enzymes.
Mhm.
And I have read some really cool stuff about it. I've talked to Sean Peterman about this too at length, but I think this is a really cool topic. It's a very nerdy,
Yeah, it
you know,
is.
maybe not for everybody, but a very
Sweet
cool
potato is my jam. I love making sweet potato.
I tell you what, I'm in Maryland for work, and I came here with 5 jars of liquor. All 5 of them were Wayne's. Within the first 5
couldn't
days,
find anything better.
within the first 5 days, they were all gone. And now
Wait a
Damn, yeah.
now I'm drinking beer.
5. So you drank 1 quart a day?
No, they were
Fine.
pints. They were pints.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, whatever.
Come
I
on.
guess that's a
Poor
little bit
liver.
better. It's a little bit
Yeah.
better.
Not
The
a
liver
quart.
is evil and must be punished.
But we had a good time. If there's anybody else, I have more questions. I mean, I was trying to weed them down because I actually have a lot of fucking questions. But let's see. If someone only can remember one rule about a condenser output, what should it be?
Don't
Just
fuck
make
it
sure you
up.
don't have steam coming out.
What was that?
Sorry.
Alan?
Go ahead.
Don't fuck it up.
Don't fuck
Right.
it up.
The
Right.
all-encompassing rule. Yeah. Just make sure you don't have steam coming out, like Amanda said, and then make sure that you keep an eye on your volume and listen. The biggest safety mistakes are people not keeping an eye on their pumps and stuff like that, and a pump going dead on you in the middle of a run because you get too comfortable doing what you're doing. Now you got steam, and if you're running on propane, you got alcohol, steam, and live fire.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the first rules. The first 2 things I was told by my grandpa and my dad were bring us something that's worth drinking and don't blow your ass up in the backyard. So
I got to go grab my cord. I'm about. To
I have a
go
cool
dead.
story related to that I almost brought up. So actually, when I was on Master Distiller, there's a little behind the scenes story that the stuff that they edit out that they never show ever. But it was so cool. My first time ever on Master Distiller, and all this crazy stuff went wrong. And we all worked together as a team. But one of my opponents, their they had a worm condenser and it cracked, right? Like it was an enclosed worm condenser and it just wasn't, it had not been taken care of properly from a lot of people running it and not probably taking care of it in between episodes. So his worm condenser cracked. He went to a shotgun condenser and he was using that. He already didn't have a really good base fermentation, so he had really low proof to start with on a shotgun condenser. And I don't think he had a thumper. So he was going right from a pot to the shotgun condenser. And in the middle of our run, we lost water directly in the middle of the run. So then they started bringing us ice. Those of us that had like the worms, we were able to, it was an open worm. I'm sorry. It was an open worm condenser. So we were able to put ice in the worms to chill it, but he wasn't because he had the shotgun condenser. And they were like, well, he can turn his still off. He'll have to turn his still off. And we were like, no, this guy's already at a disadvantage. I'm not going to say the name of the episode or any names of any contestants or anything, but we all kind of worked together as a team, the three of us, the competitors, and we held bags of ice around his shotgun condenser to jacket it and try to get it to function properly for him. And it lasted maybe like 35 minutes until we had water flow back on, but we were just like emptying out our condensers and we had people coming in and bringing us in ice, and we all kind of just worked together as a team to like make the run happen, and we didn't want anybody to have to turn their stills off. And it's the crazy stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you don't always see. And then after that, he had to run that. Once we had water flow again, this correlates to the topic we were talking about running a drip as opposed to a stream. He had such low proof on his mash they like us to present a jar of 100 proof, right? Sometimes things go wrong and it's out of our control, or there's things that we didn't see or we didn't anticipate, like the temperature of Tennessee in the wintertime at nighttime, right? How cold it can get and how mashes can stall. But this poor guy, he was a great distiller and he had a great recipe and his stuff smelled incredible, but he had to pack it with copper mesh and run it super slow. He ran the whole time at a drip so that he could try to bring up his proof and get it enough of a distillate to hand in that was at 100 proof. If he had run it at a stream, it would not have refluxed enough. It wouldn't have condensed enough, refluxed and raised the proof of it, and it would have come out at a really low proof for him. So he purposely ran it at a drip. It smelled like a bakery. Like it was absolutely incredible. It smelled so good the whole time. But when he ran at that high proof, it came off and it had gotten like a super high proof for him because he ran it so slow. But he was intentionally running that slow so he could bring the proof up so he had something worth any count to hand in. It was just really unfortunate. But it's interesting to see the stuff that can go wrong and then the skills that distillers have that are experienced and the things they know to do to work with their equipment and get their equipment to kind of function for them. And again, you have to know your equipment, know how to run it, know the limitations of it, and know like, do I need to run this fast? Do I need to run it slow? And what happens if I do that? So I like to tell people to push their equipment to limitations. And this guy did everything he could to stay in the game. And he was just at a disadvantage from the very beginning. And it was just like one bad thing after another happened to him. But he ran at a stream. We ran out of water flow. Like everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Man, I hate those days.
Then they don't show any of it. It all gets
those days happen.
We film stuff for hours and days, and you only see a small percentage of really what all the work that we do because they have to sum it up for you into one episode. There's a lot that goes on. Let's see. Yeah, and Ice Road. Yeah, it's so many sketchy rides, so many hauls.
I think that the people who are good distillers, they didn't get there by not making mistakes. I think all of us make plenty of mistakes, and that's as long as you learn from them. I mean, that's the key. That's how you learn shit. That's how you got a FAFO.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Now, Alan, there's a question here for you. When cuts on the fly, when someone says cuts on the fly, what does that mean exactly?
Good question.
It means being comfortable enough to know how to find your transition between not just head parts and hearts and tails, but also the transition between early heads and late heads. Some of the things from the late heads that you might want to keep as part of your hearts to go into a barrel if you're aging or maturing a spirit and that sort of thing, as opposed to breaking it down into little fractions that you go back and revisit. There's nothing wrong with doing that, right? That's a good way to start and to learn. But at some point, just like with anything else that you do, any other art that you pursue, you should get to the point that you can be able to smell and taste and feel that alcohol,
Right.
see what the texture is, etc., and not have to break it down that way, right? And the reason I say that that's important, because if you're spending all the time analyzing those jars as you go, especially if you start doing this on a more common basis, and you're also trying to manage the other things that we've talked about tonight, like your distillation curve, your tension temperature, etc., 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 you're automatically going to be distracted from those things by being so nervous about where your cuts are falling at that you have to break it down into those small
Right.
fractions. So it's important to get to that point. It's just like learning to ride a bicycle, right? Eventually you take the training wheels off and you start riding the bicycle,
Yeah.
right? You're not relying on those training wheels anymore, and fine to start with training wheels for sure. I wanted to comment on one more thing.
Yeah.
That last question about the condenser and what not to do, etc. One mistake I see a lot in pictures that people send me for One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute on YouTube is people who are going to double pot still distillation in particular and not running a thumper put their condenser way too close to the still and way too close to the heat source that they're running on propane. Be cognizant of where that condenser is at. And if you have to buy more copper or stainless steel tubing to get that condenser away from that flame,
Do it.
get it away from the flame within reason, as best as you can, and make sure the output is facing away from the still and the heat source. That way, if you ever get steam, it's not just blasting right to the fire because you just add.
Yeah, if you've ever seen a still on fire, not that I have, but let's just say that if you've seen it happen, take his advice. Get you some more copper pipe. It's not that expensive.
Have you ever seen the basement floor on fire one time? You look like Doc Brown. Nothing good.
Well,
Nothing good.
I think we're going to wind down on this episode here of The Proof is Out There. Amanda, I'm sure everybody knows already, but just in case they don't, where can they find you and what do you got going on?
Yeah.
So right now I'm just on Facebook. I'm not great with social media or self-promotion, but I have a distilling business. We are opening a educational distillery, restoring a historical building. As soon as we get our certificate of occupancy, I should be moving in. My business is going to be called, or currently it's called Unholy Beginnings Distilling Company. I teach monthly distilling classes at ubdistilling.com. We are currently doing our last class of the year right now because everybody would like to have off with their family for December. Totally understand. Yep. It's a lot of work to put the classes together, and I couldn't do it without my partners and my coworkers. But yeah, ubdistilling.com for classes. Okay. I'm on YouTube at Amanda Bryant Distilling. I'm trying to get back onto that flow, and I mainly just do Facebook because I don't understand Instagram and I don't know any other social media things. But you can check me out. There will be a new season of Moonshiners coming out. I don't think that they have released the premiere date yet, but that should be fairly soon. So just keep an eye out. The way that I do it, and this is the best way I can answer that question to anybody, is that there's something called Discovery Channel TV schedule. And if you really want to know, I get asked this question like 25 times a day. Go on Discovery Channel TV schedule, and it's like the TV guide, and it goes ahead 3 weeks. So you just keep checking that. And then eventually Moonshiners will pop up in that TV schedule in the next coming weeks. Or Discovery Channel will make an official announcement and they'll put out a commercial and you'll find out exactly when I do. So I'm not keeping anything from you guys, as much as I do. When the commercial drops, we'll all know. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Alan, where can we find you at?
Yeah. First I want to give one more quick shout out to Amanda. Amanda's one of the coolest people I know, and I'll tell you guys a real quick story. The things that people don't understand about Amanda. So when my dad was super, super down in the dumps, and he loves Ice Road Truckers / right? But he was going through hip replacement and stuff, and he was just really, really down. Amanda, cool as shit, called my dad to talk to him, and it made his day, and I had to hear about it for like 3 weeks till I was finally like, I know her. I don't need to hear it anymore. But he loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I appreciate the hell out of it.
That's
But,
awesome.
yeah. So you can find me a bunch of places. So Old Homestead Distillery, oldhomesteaddc.com. So that's part of a complex called Alcohol Acres, which includes the Old Homestead Distillery, where we preserve tradition and push boundaries. There will be,
by the way.
do what?
It's a beautiful distillery, by the way, and beautiful compound. The whole place is just gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah. Tyler and I work really hard to keep the distillery clean and fit and in good shape. We want it to be the cleanest distillery in Indiana when people come in there. But the whole facility, everything there is awesome. Out at Patoka Lake, it's part of a larger facility called Alcohol Acres, which includes the Patoka Lake Winery, the Patoka Lake Brewery, the Old Homestead Distillery, the Old Homestead Hotel. We own the marina, the gas station. Like, it's all the things. We own all the things. If you want to get drunk and crawl to your hotel room, as long as you can make it there, we got it for you. So
You have like a cigar shop and everything, right?
we do. We have a humidor, two humidors. So one at the distillery and one at the winery. So there'll be an educational component coming to that probably sometime next year. Tours will be starting up next year. Tasting room is open. Right now, obviously, a lot of young spirits, a lot of clear spirits, because in the state of Indiana, we actually cannot purchase and resell spirits in our tasting room unless we blend them 60-40 with our stuff. It kind of sucks because we actually have about 200 barrels laid down that we had made to my specs by Moondrops Distillery up in Indianapolis, using my yeast, my grain, etc. And so I'm setting on it until it goes into distribution. You can keep up with Stolen Wolf Distillery. I do a lot of work with my brother Eric Wolf on a product we call Wolf and Wilson. We've done some stuff with Paul Minta down at Key West as well, a cool little rum project recently, and there's more of that stuff coming as well. You can find me at thealchemistcabinet.com, and that's where you'll find all the information about the Practical Distillers and Alchemist Almanac, which is kind of like a farmer's almanac. Gets released yearly, but it's catered towards distillers and people with more traditional folk magic practices, that sort of stuff. A number of other books will be coming out in the near future. One specific to distillation. I don't know. Like I said, I'm always doing something. And then I have the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute on YouTube. If you have Ghosts, You Have Everything podcast. And at some point, Tyler Richardson and I are going to kick up the old One Piece at a Time Sacred and Profane podcast and turn that into a new platform as well, if time ever provides. Other than that, you can find my fat ass on a bicycle somewhere trying not to die. So
I guess I cannot say that you're lazy at all, Alan, right?
Not a chance.
Every breath is a chance for creation, for sure.
Yeah, I got you, brother.
You're bad. Do it.
Awesome.
Do it if you don't feel like doing it, because you'll learn something. You know.
Yep, I hear you. Well, I would like to thank you both for coming on. Alan, I look forward to meeting you. Wayne, I think he was talking about you and I taking a road trip, is what he was just saying.
Come up.
We can do that. We can. I need to go there because I got to pick something up that's still sitting out there in a little shed somewhere in southern Indiana. And
let's go.
All right, yeah, we'll do that.
I'll go.
We got
hell yeah. And Amanda, as always, it's great to see you, even though it's here.
Likewise, this was a pleasure to see you guys. You're all my good friends, so it was like great to catch up. This was very nice. Thank you for thinking of me and inviting me. I'm happy to do this again. I mean, this is probably the worst night of the month for me because I haven't slept in 2 days. But for you guys, I'm here for you guys.
You're awesome, girl. We love
you. And I love y'all. It's really good to see you guys. And I definitely need to come visit you, Alan. That is on my checklist of things to do in my free time. Yeah, I got some free time next month. And I'm
road trip. Everybody.
Yes.
Yep. Everybody next month. Going
to Indiana.
Party at Alan's house.
I got all kinds of stuff that's not even been released yet. I'll happily put it in front of you.
Christmas in southern Indiana.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, again, I wish all the best with your podcast.
Thank you.
Everybody keep an eye out for The Proof is Out There, right? Is that that's the official title? The Proof is Out There. These are really intelligent people talking about some cool topics. And I appreciate y'all inviting me on. And I appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight to watch. I appreciate your questions. I was not able to really go through the comment section, but thank you guys
There.
so much for tuning in and watching and supporting these guys. Yo, rock.
Thank you.
But
Until
You work
next
hard.
time.
I don't even look at the comments. I'm just like, no, I'm here. That's good enough.
Yeah, I try
I-
to keep up. It's
I
tough.
tried, but they're going. They're going.
Oh,
You know
yeah,
I'm
there's a lot
neurotic.
of
You know I'm
comments.
neurotic.
But again, I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank
to
Yes.
Wayne
Thanks,
and I's second episode. Look for Wicked Winter coming out next
Coming out
month.
in December.
I will be keeping an eye out for it. All right. Thank you
Nice.
guys.
Yeah.
Love
Have a
y'all.
beautiful night.
Later.
Deuces.
Love y'all.
Bye.